Welcome to this series in Ministry Corner. We are talking to active duty service member Aaron Griffin about how he ministers through his faith in uniform. Please watch the whole series and get all he has to offer. All right, welcome back to the Ministry Corner, guys. I've got Aaron Griffin here for episode 2 of Ministering in the Military. So let's get right back to it, brother. I think when we left off, we were talking about shared values. And so in this conversation, I really want to talk about there's a very apparent identity we take on, we put on that uniform when we enlist or even get our commission for officers, right? We say we're not just doing a job, we're answering a calling, right? We're living by a different mantra than the rest of the population, and in doing so, there's this culture we adopt and this identity that we put on. Meanwhile, as Christians, we're called to have a completely separate identity. And so I want to kind of talk about what does it look like to combine these two identities, to have one take over or the other take over. How do we think we ought to be doing that, and how are we doing that? And at the same time, while there's competing identities, competing cultures that kind of clash at times, there is a whole huge overlap in the values that both share. And so let's talk first about these two identities. So okay. Do you feel that you've taken on the identity of a soldier and a Christian, and that they sometimes clash?
No, I think that when done right and the way I go about it, they're mutually supportive. Okay,
so, and that brings me back to when we were talking off camera, maybe some of us have seen the movie We Were Soldiers.
Great movie.
Right? There's this moment where the young sergeant has a child. He's in the chapel, yep. And the colonel comes and sits down next to him, and he's struggling. He's like, I don't know if I'm ready to be a father, if I can do this and be a soldier. And the general quote from
Hal Moore,
yep. Colonel Hal Moore at the time was something along the lines of, I think being one makes me better at being the other, and you're saying that being one helps you be the other, or being one helps you be both. Like, what I mean by that is it being Christian helps you be a better soldier, or that being Christian helps you be a better soldier and being a soldier helps you be a better Christian? So do they lend to each other, or does one lend to one?
No, again, another great question. I think being a Christian helps me to be better at everything, first and foremost. But I think being a soldier gives me so many opportunities to actually practice and exercise my faith. You're not going to build muscles if you don't go to the gym.
Amen. Right.
So you got to find yourself, and you got sets and reps, and then the Army provides me plenty of opportunities to get after some sets and reps as a Christian.
Okay. So one of the things that might stand out for some folks is, so Christian culture, we're going to talk about humility a lot, right? Meanwhile, military culture, bravado, extreme masculinity, like you got
loudest voice wins.
Exactly, yeah. Right. Power, authority, all these things. So how do you merge those two? How do you balance those two? How does that work in your life, the way you've done it as a soldier?
I think that your ideal leaders in the Army have that humility. I think we'll talk about it later, but our professional military education, they're teaching servant leadership. They're teaching the importance of having humility, empathy. We've got assessment programs that are making sure that our leaders have that empathy, have awareness of their surroundings, of their soldiers. So I think we are seeing a paradigm shift in the Army, which is refreshing. And again, just the fact that we're teaching servant leadership in our professional military education.
Yeah, from the bottom, right? Like, from the first class you go to become an NCO, non-commissioned officer, right. Yeah. They're teaching that, right?
Exactly. So I think, and by doing so, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, you're getting after leaders who are gaining the commitment. Of their soldiers.
Color that in for us a little bit. Explain that.
And that's something else that we teach in Army leadership. You can have a committed soldier, you can have a compliant soldier, and they're two different things. And in a quick example, if a compliant soldier, if I said, hey, Eric, I need you to go over there and take out the trash. And you go over there and you grab the bag and you pull it out and you see that there's gum and all kinds. We've all seen it, the gunk right. that's in the trash can when you pull out the trash bag. Okay, compliant soldier's going to see that and disregard it and take the bag out and throw it in the dumpster. A committed soldier, they're going to go that extra mile. They're going to pull out that bag. They're going to see the gunk, the gum, and like, you know what? Big Sarge didn't tell me to clean out the trash can, but it needs to be cleaned out. And that's just an example of the difference between a committed soldier and a compliant soldier. And I think to get after that, you need leaders who earn, and you have to earn it, and it takes time, the trust of their soldiers. And the ones that can demonstrate that humility and empathy, I think best capture that trust.
Yeah, fully agree.
But don't get me wrong, I think
agree.
you can be firm, fair, consistent, and have some of that bravado you're talking about, and still you're still living Christian values. You're still an effective leader. You just don't have to. You don't have to berate anybody. You treat everybody with dignity and respect.
Right. Okay. So, and I think I feel like that's probably been an overall growth of the population, at least the American population, treating people better over time, right? Recognizing that we need to treat everybody with dignity and respect, and that's bled into the culture. But that is ultimately, that's a Christian value, right? And so it's not that we're having to figure out how to blend things. We're bringing in what's already natural to our calling on how to live and how to love one another, right? Now we'll use different words like empathy, respect, right? But it's the humility in the way we approach things. Right. It's the love that we're called to give and display to everybody that comes out in that form of empathy or anything else, right? So how about this one? It's going to be a little different. We're supposed to be peacemakers, right? And yet you're in an organization that is originally designed and will continue to be designed to kill people and blow stuff up. Does that create a conflict with your two identities? I signed a contract. I pledged an oath. I put on this uniform every day. I salute that flag. Meanwhile, I have another flag with a cross on it, right? That says I'm supposed to love, I'm supposed to preserve life and be the peacemaker. How do you feel a struggle? And it's okay if you don't, but I want to be able to just really explore how do we work that balance in our life when we're called to do these two things and we signed up for these two things. And it seems like for some of us, we're going to really struggle with that.
No, and that's a fair question. And I've seen other Christians who do struggle with that. I sleep good at night. It's not a struggle that I have, and that's because you can read throughout the Bible of soldiers and warriors that were living out their faith, and I still think God. I know God found favor in them. Not that I think. So I don't. That is not something that I personally struggle with.
Okay, so it doesn't bother your conscience, and I'm not saying it should by any means, but I say I bring this up because I know other people are going to watch this,
right?
And maybe they've struggled, right?
Yeah, and it's a fair question.
Yeah, and so I think we've been introduced through a former pastor to the concept or the phrasing of like a moral injury. Basically, when you've been introduced to trauma, whether you've witnessed it or you've caused it, there's a healing that needs to occur. And so I would say for anyone who's struggling in their faith and who's experienced those things, that's why, look, God hates divorce. Of course he hates war, but these things are going to happen because we live in a sinful world, right?
Right.
And I think if we signed a contract, we pledged an oath, we put on a uniform, we salute that flag, we need to live that out well. Have you ever encountered somebody who's what do they call that? Conscientious objector. Have you ever had one of them in your units?
No, I haven't, okay. But I've seen them in movies. But and going back a little bit too, it is my prayer. I am not seeking an opportunity to go to war. It's like my prayer, that we never have to go to war. But like you said, we live in a world where sin was introduced, and sometimes it comes to that.
Yeah.
But it is my prayer that we don't have to.
Right. And so, but clear conscience. Yep. You can serve in a military. You can serve in a combat arms unit and a combat arms MOS, and you feel like, hey, you know what? I'm upholding my obligation. I'm serving my country, and I'm serving God. All doing it well, and it's not in conflict. And I feel like a lot of us, we can come to that place. And for anyone who's going to struggle, leave something in the comments. Let that conversation happen. Let's let experience and our reliance on Scripture really get us to a place of comfort there, because we don't want anyone struggling with their conscience on how to serve either master they have, right? Bottom line, we don't ever have to betray our godly Christian values to be able to serve well in the military. In addressing that, have you ever encountered a situation where it was a moral issue and you felt like, you know what, this is an immoral order I've been given or a directive I've been given, and I need to stand tall and say, no, I can't do that for you. I can't be the one.
Yeah, I can think of one specific area. So I know you served in the Army, so you're familiar with the military balls, the ceremonies, and the grog.
The grog. The mysterious bowl full of all kinds of liquor and other things.
Everything.
Right? Maybe some dirty socks, all kinds of stuff, right?
Yeah, and as I've progressed in my military career, in rank, I've found where people have asked me to participate in the skit that goes along with the grog. And it's just something that I struggle with, and I just want no part in it. I won't say that, hey, we're not going to do it. I just won't partake in it. So it's the first couple of times it was an awkward conversation. We're like, okay, hey, Griffin, this is gonna be your part of the skit, and then to say, actually, no, I'm not comfortable doing that. Yeah. We can find somebody else to do it. It is kind of weird, but that's one area. And it's not that, like, I'm not condoning drinking or anything, but it's just something that I personally.
You're not condemning it, right?
Yeah.
We know that there's room for it, right?
Yeah, I'm not condemning it. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're not outright calling drinking sin, but I can tell you what you see going on with the grog and after the grog easily leads to sin for many.
And I want to emulate Jesus, and I can't picture Jesus going up there and participating in any skit associated with the grog.
Even though it's tradition, even though it's expected in certain positions, right? And so, but I like what you said. The first couple conversations were a little awkward, but after a couple practice runs, you feel more confident, more comfortable. You can execute that conversation a whole lot easier now.
Yeah, and the other thing is it's people. It's the same group of leaders. So I'm gonna have to have this uncomfortable conversation again when I go to my next unit. But
gotcha.
But I can armor up beforehand and prepare for that conversation and let them know ahead of time. Hey, like, that grog thing, it's not me.
Yeah. Well, and so you've had how many successful test runs of this rejection of that thing now?
I've gone 3 for 3 now.
Okay, 3 for 3, successful. So you're batting 1,000. Yeah. So, at law of averages says, hey, you're going to fail next time. But
and ultimately, I think people respect it. You know,
exactly.
And I haven't had any.
And that's the other thing. So that's one of these things with culture, right? So. While we've got competing identities, competing cultures, this is one of the things that bleeds well. So in the military and in Christianity, we all recognize authority, right? We all recognize integrity, right? And so when we see somebody exercising their authority appropriately or restraining it appropriately, and at the same time demonstrating integrity, you were talking about something earlier before we were on camera about the man you are at home, the man you are at work, the man you are at church. Was this the 3 examples you gave me? I can't remember.
Yes. Okay. We all have these different hats that we wear, these different identities. I'm a brother, I'm a father, I'm a friend, obviously a soldier, and I'm also a Christian. And a lot of times you put a pin on a board, there's this distance between each pin or each dot on the board. And I think if you're really doing it right, the distance between those pins, those dots, it shrinks. The gap becomes smaller, and that's what character is. And ideally, there is no gap in between all those identities. When I'm a father, I'm also a Christian and a soldier, and it's just consistent.
Right, and so I think that's beautiful. I think, speaking specifically to the audience that can relate to military terms, right? When we talk about zeroing that weapon, right?
Tighten that shot group,
right? So get those rounds to land closer and closer, right? You're not going to get it right the first time, right? But it's through practice, it's through determination, and understanding which identity to make the primary identity lends to the rest, right? And so if we focus on being a father, focus on being a soldier, we're typically going to have to take from one to be better at the other. But with the Christian identity, it makes me a better father, makes me a better husband, makes me a better neighbor, makes me a better soldier, right? So by making it the primary, which it's supposed to be, the primary identity in our life, the primary culture we want to adopt, it's easier to draw all those points to one stationary point versus trying to get multiple dots to chase each other to find a similar location. So again, in trying to zero that weapon, you got to find what is the center, you know?
Yeah, and I don't want to sit here and make it sound like, oh, I'm perfect.
No, of course not. Yeah.
I've always got that dime size shot group, because it is not the case. There are times, quite often, where I got to recalibrate. But that is the goal, is for me to be as consistent as possible. When you see me at work, you're like, oh, that's the same Aaron I see at church. You see me at home, that's the same Aaron I see at work. I want to be consistent.
All right, so we got just a couple minutes here left. I want to touch on the other piece with its culturally drastically different Christianity, military, language, right?
Yeah, I love talking about this. So I think that so I have a limited profanity. I've eliminated, I don't know what I just said, but I've eliminated profanity in, I don't know, for several years now. Like early on in my career, I said some words I wasn't proud of, but I've eliminated now, and I'm pretty proud of it. And it is something I haven't struggled with for a long time. But it's opened up so many doors. Like, I don't have to tell people, hey, I'm Aaron, I'm a Christian. They just know. And that's the quickest way that I've come to see people identify that there's something different about me, is I'm not using that type of language. It's easy. You can be effective without doing that. So earlier you asked me about advice for people. That's one bit of advice. Of, not even just for being a good Christian, like to not put yourself in a tough situation, like eliminate that language.
And I mean, and that's part of my story and testimony I've shared multiple times, right? You know, and super easily, like, hey, if you're a Christian, you can't have fresh water and salt water coming out of the same spring, right? And so if this is, and I kind of look at it this way, I always kind of bring it back to this. You've probably, at some point, you said something that was a bad word or a bad phrase in life, and somebody said something along the lines of, you kiss your grandmother with that mouth, right? And so I kind of just tie that into, you know, if you hear me say one thing or speak in a certain manner, and you wonder how I use that same mouth to worship my God,
right? Yeah.
You know, it has no place. It's
incongruent. They're incompatible.
Exactly.
And
but do you feel you can be an effective leader in the military in a culture that embraces the foul language and embraces dirty topics, that you can speak in a profound and impactful way without having a knife hand everybody all the time, and you can get your point across and they'll follow orders?
I think that, again, you can still be fair and consistent. People can pick up on your body language and tell that you're unhappy or displeased with a certain situation.
We have other tools, right? So we got, like I said, body language, tone, volume, right?
And your question was, do I think you can be? I would submit to you that I think you would be a more effective leader if you eliminated that language. Again, because it's all about treating people with dignity and respect. You can raise your voice. I mean, Jesus flipped tables.
Yeah. I think he's got a little warrant to do some things we don't do, right? Right. Or that we don't have.
The table's safe.
Yeah. But no, fully agreed. And so, one, I appreciate your transparency on the, you know, we've both slipped up in that thing as far as language and uniform, but I have such an appreciation for the fact that you've been able to kill that demon, to you know, wrestle that rascal to the ground and be done with it, you know. And so that's a victory you have, and it's a daily testimony for everybody following you, everybody watching you, everybody working with you. And so that's so awesome.
Yeah, can I add to just real quick? Again, signs of affirmation, you know, that lets me know I'm doing the right thing is when I have other Army leaders. It was maybe a month or two ago, I went on a run with another Army leader, and we were just talking, and I love those opportunities because that's when faith just inevitably creeps into conversation. And as we were wrapping up the run and we're walking back to the unit area, this particular leader just reached over or spoke to me and said that, hey, I just want to let you know that I'm trying to stop cursing just because of the way you carry yourself. Like I saw that and you encouraged me to do the same thing. And that was a good feeling. It was just an affirmation. Hey man, I'm doing the right thing.
And it's impacting, right? It's not just for you, it's for others, right?
Yeah, and I notice, and I'm super appreciative of it when I see other people try not to curse around me. Yeah. And I'm not that guy where if I hear somebody curse, where I jump onto them and get onto them. But
they know. They know. Yeah. They pick up on it. All right. So thank you for that. Guys, that kind of wraps up this segment. We'll catch you right back here for episode 3 next time. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Ministry Corner. We look forward to seeing you guys next time. If you like what you're hearing, click that subscribe button, like and share with your friends, and we'll see you soon.